to the Dresden Nexus podcast, recorded live from the 2025 Dresden Nexus Conference. I'm your host, Anacláudia, and today we're joined by Anacláudia Rossbach, United Nations Secretary General and Executive Director of the UN Human Settlements Programme, UN Habitat. This year marks a special occasion as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the United Nations University. Throughout this series, we'll explore the future of resources and how navigating the interconnected challenges of water, energy, food, land, and other resources, the resource nexus, will shape our path toward a sustainable world. In this episode, we'll hear from Anacláudia Rossbach, who will share her invaluable insights. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Attica. It's a great honor to be here today with you.
Let's dive into conversation.
Let's go for it.
As cities grow, how do you see the role of urban areas in addressing the interconnected challenges of water, energy, food, and other resources? And what strategies can cities adopt to integrate the resource nexus into urban planning?
Yeah, there are so many challenges, Attica, in relation to urban development and resource preservation. I still think that we are on a way to understand, this nexus. I'm glad that I am here at this conference and seeing so many researchers looking at that. But maybe one critical resource that connects, others that were mentioned is land. Right, and land is connected to the water source, land is connected to food security and also to energy. So let's look at urban sprawl, for example. We are growing much more in territory than in population. Is this growth really needed? This is a question mark, right? Why are we growing so much in territory than in population? There are so many reasons for that. There is, of course, an economic reason for that. There are business that are based on real estate development, city expansion, the way we live, the way we want to live, but also poverty. If you look to countries as, for example, Peru, the growth in the last 20 years has been 90% informal. So poor people, they just don't have a place to be. And they have been contributing also to urban sprawl and to urban growth. And the way we are doing that has been oppressing or putting a lot of pressure in the natural resources that we have in the surrounding of the cities. More specifically, if we look at metropolitan areas, right, and the complexities and metropolitan areas, I would say in general, if we look at the Global South, we will also identify a factor of inequalities, but it's happening also in the Global North. So the tragedies that we see today affecting many, many cities, and every day, it's a new surprise because these disasters, these events, these tragedies, they are affecting cities where we haven't expected before. And let's give you some examples. The fires in Los Angeles, right, that affected the city in this terrible way, or the floodings that affected European cities, the droughts that are being affecting cities like Cape Town, Santiago, Bogotá, São Paulo a couple of years ago, the heat waves, the high temperatures, right? These are all events that have been affecting cities in a more intense and more frequent way. And urban sprawl is related to that and the way we use land. The work of UN Habitat is based on a commitment that was endorsed by member states of the United Nations system back in 2016, the New Urban Agenda. And the New Urban Agenda foreseen a principle that we don't really recognize much in our urban laws or regulations or urban plans. The principles are the social and ecological functions of the land. So we understand the economic value of the land, but we don't understand the social and the ecological value of the land. So I believe one critical way to address, the availability of resources And through urban planning is looking at land as a central resource and addressing urban sprawl through urban planning that is focused on the people and the nature.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent point. And often, indeed, land is only seen in its economic value, and I think extending that then to really understand the socio-ecological relations would really then add value as well to how we use it. And indeed, I think resource sufficiency, I think it's something that we really need to more urgently look into, that our cities are not sprawling
Exactly.
Uncontrollably. In your work with UN Habitat, I mean, I think you've mentioned a couple of examples already. How can sustainable housing and urban infrastructure contribute to better resource management? What are some innovative approaches that are being implemented in cities to promote more sustainable living?
Yeah. So first of all, housing is central, right? It's also the center of the new urban agenda, and with houses we cannot have the SDGs. We cannot, achieve the major, or overcome the major gaps and challenges that we have today in our planet. I think one important lesson learned is about location of housing, and where we build these houses, and also how we build these houses, right? We learned that massive housing projects in peripheric areas are very, very expensive for the city in terms of costs of infrastructure, but also for the environment, because you have to build more infrastructure, you expand your transportation systems, and this all implies in emissions at the end of the day, right? So we understood and we learned that houses need to be better located. I believe innovative approaches today is the recycling of existing buildings, for example, or let's look at the Global South, how many households, they have addressed their housing needs through incremental housing. So maximizing what we already have. So there are examples of innovations. Also today we understand that public spaces are so important for social cohesion, but also important for us, to deal with issues like the rising temperatures. Public green spaces are critical, or the sponge spaces, right, to capture excessive raining and to avoid flooding. So we have today, a knowledge and technologies that are based on nature, the so-called nature-based solutions. We understand that we need to have more, green sponge spaces in cities. We understand that we have need to have diversity, incrementalism, mixed use, and to be context-oriented, right? Look at the local resources that we have to address the needs.
That brings me to my next question. With rapid urbanization projected for the coming decades, particularly in the quote-unquote global south, what do you believe are the most urgent priorities for cities to ensure that they remain resilient and sustainable in the face of climate change and resource scarcity?
Yeah, I think an urgent need is to deal with the population living in a situation of vulnerability. And here we have the displaced population. So if you look at the humanitarian shelters, for example, how many of them, they have been staying like that for so many years. We need to address that. If we look at the informal settlements, we have more than 1 billion people living in informal settlements. We have almost 2 billion people without access to adequate water. So these are major, major gaps that we have to address with urgency. We are right now 50% urbanized. The projection is that around 2050 will be 70% urbanized. And, the major bulk of this urbanization will take place in regions like Africa and Southeast Asia. So we have gaps. We need to overcome those gaps. when we have climate-related events, disasters, they are affecting these populations, living in more, vulnerable situation. And we still have people coming to cities. So cities need to be prepared. They have to plan to be prepared, and we need to have integrated housing policies to shelter these people. This is why we set up housing, land, basic services, transformation of informal settlements as a key focus area for UN Habitat in this next strategic planning cycle from 26 to 29.
Excellent. Now, if you have to, in one word, what do we need most to secure a bright resource future?
Can I say two?
I'll give you a chance.
So maybe collaboration and integration. We need to collaborate. We need to, work in co-creation models. We need to coordinate, but we need to integrate the perspectives, the views. We cannot think isolated, in silos, in sectors. Water, provision of water is connected, to city planning, is connected to environment, is connected to the economy, is connected to the social needs. And we have to have a holistic view of that, right?
Excellent. That's exactly why we're all gathered here for the Nexus Conference. Thank you, Anacláudia, for sharing your expertise and vision for such a critical topic. It's conversations like these that help us to reimagine the future of resources and sustainability. We hope you enjoyed this episode and that it sparked new ideas on how we can all contribute to a more sustainable and equitable future as well. Stay tuned for more episodes of the Dresden Nexus podcast, where thought leaders from around the world come together to explore solutions to the resource nexus. Until next time, I'm Atika Faru Saleh, and thank you for listening.